Destiny was really hard to understand exactly what it was before this preview, but it turns out that Destiny is something that I know almost every gamer is going to want to play for themselves.
Is that it?
I didn't know what to expect from this game prior to E3 this year, and even after watching videos of gameplay, I was a little bit more confident, but still really lost on what it was. I mean, it's a first-person shooter in space with aliens, being developed by Bungie, the developers that made Halo. So my thoughts are, what is this? Another Halo? Just happens to be multi-platform? But see, this is where it kind of gets weird. It's a first-person shooter with a bunch of other players. So what does that make this? A shooter MMO? An MMO FPS? But Bungie has said clearly tons of times this is not an MMO. But everything they're showing is saying it is. Alright. So, PlanetSide 2, which is a different game that happens to be developed by Sony Online Entertainment, that's an actual first-person shooter MMO. And people aren't rushing out there to go play that game. So why would Activision spend $500 million on this series? It just seems confusing. So there has to be something here, right? This is something definitely different. And I could say that firsthand unabashedly. Now, what is it? I could try to explain this in a few words, but it still misses the mark of how I felt when I was playing the game. But let's start with some kind of baseline. The universe feels like something that compares to Star Wars, and I do not say that lightly. But the small amount of time I had with the game, it feels rich and fleshed out. And there's a mix between technology and magic that doesn't feel artificial. It feels like it's always been there. And that mix between magic and technology has that strong Star Wars feeling, and it gives you that sense of what it feels like when you're watching the movies. But even Star Wars misses the mark to describe this game. But, as you can probably see by just looking at it, another strong noticeable influence would have to be Mass Effect. The art style has a striking similarity to the Mass Effect series, and I think that has a decent amount to do with the robotic art choice, along with other small similarities. But even though Destiny is an RPG, well, it has RPG qualities, it doesn't have that Mass Effect style restricted space world. It feels different than that, and that's really important. Destiny feels open, like a real place, and even their response that seemed strange, they're in limited areas, and there's so much more to explore, they're easy to disregard. But it's not just a massive space either, it feels lived in, it's personalized. It doesn't feel generic, and it's a place that when I go there, I want to know more, I want to explore more, and unlike a traditional MMO, it doesn't seem randomly generated, which is due to a huge amount of space that they have to fill. And it also avoids the lack of small touches that a real world would have that make most MMOs just seem bland. Now some are going to call this an MMO, and I don't agree with them. There isn't 1,000-person worlds and 100-player characters on screen. This game is online, yes, but you're not exploring those spaces with 100-player characters around you all the time. And even if you and a friend are online at the same time, in the same place, you're not going to be able to find each other most likely, because you're going to be on different instances. And so, it is different. It doesn't have that MMO feel. I would actually say this is more like Phantasy Star Online. Yes, there were hub worlds with hundreds of players on them at the same time, but you played the levels with only about 4 players. This is a lot like that. When you go on co-op missions, your team is only comprised of 3 players. And from time to time, you might bump into other players in the same area, but that's about it. I wouldn't say this is an MMO. I would say it has MMO elements sprinkled all over the experience. The fact that it's not an MMO becomes a big differentiator. The depth of the world adds this adventure game style aspect that just adds to the overall feeling. The detail world makes you buy into what the game is selling and propels this magical feeling you get when you're exploring. And just as a secondary benefit, adds to the overall gameplay. So I've been talking about how this game makes me feel. And in this game, that's a big part of what makes it what it is. But gameplay is key. And that's ultimately why we play video games in the first place. So I'm going to start with another baseline to explain the core gameplay loop. And the most obvious influence by just watching what we've been showing would probably be Borderlands. And that's due to the large amount of what seems to be randomized weapons and the numbers that fly off enemies when you shoot them. Now, there are a couple other influences, but they pretty much in there. Another really strong influence would probably be Diablo. Now, I know that most of you at home watching would probably say, Jeff, you're crazy. Diablo is a point-and-click action game, and this is a first-person shooter. But it's not because of that. It's because this is a loot game. And like, I kid you not, a crazy loot game in fact. There is this urge to get better weapons, level up your character, and like any good loot game, the loot is different, looks different, and has different characteristics. It adds this addictive quality to the game that makes killing guys feel so rewarding. And I mean, oh my god, I just want to kill guys so I get that mad loots. Oh, it just makes me hot thinking about it, you know? But it doesn't end there. This is built on a framework that is core to the game. And that is good, fun shooting guys. Everything in single player, co-op to competitive. This is part that I've heard from other video game enthusiasts and news outlets that it feels like Halo. And you know what? I don't know about that. Now, I'm not going to say they're wrong, and I'm not going to say it feels nothing like Halo, because that isn't the case either. I honestly didn't see or feel the comparison until I played competitive multiplayer. It was my second round of play, and when I decided to use the sniper rifle, boom, there it was. And slowly and surely, other little parts sunk in as too, and I could tell. But you know what? Those are probably all the best parts that were from the Halo series that I couldn't imagine them leaving behind or not including in this game. But the rest of the gameplay? Okay. I'm going to try to explain this deep thought moment I had. So, I didn't notice any of the Halo gameplay influences when I played against the enemies, aka the computer, or exploring for that fact. It wasn't until after I played Destiny and I thought about it that I noticed the core gameplay feel had a super faint similarity to the Halo games. And it seems like they took that core gameplay style and then refined it again, and then ultimately built on top of that refinement. So when I played the game after I had this retrospective, Destiny felt like a distant cousin to Halo, with several generations separating the two games. And that would probably explain why Bungie took so much time to develop this game. And let me tell you, this game feels amazing. I was talking about how the loot and how addictive, rewarding, and how much more fun the gameplay is because of it. And it is. But the main dopamine drip comes from the tactile feel of the core gameplay. The shooting, the action combat, the feel of the right vibration as contact is made or the gun is fired. Even down to the sounds of the foray from melee, jumping, explosions, or when you hit enemies. It is all ridiculously fine-tuned. And I want to make this apparent. The term fine-tuned is used quite a bit in this industry to explain a lot of different games, but I don't think it's ever been so accurate until I played this game. You know what, and to be honest, I don't think I've ever been so excited or needy out of 100 first-person shooters I've played to get back to this game. From the brief experience I've had with it, and I don't know if I want to say this because it's such a bold statement, but from the brief experience I've had with it, I think Destiny might be the best feeling first-person shooter I've ever played with a controller. And I want this to be stated for the record. I've never been that big of a Bungie fan. And at this point, I thought they honestly kind of got lucky with Halo on the original Xbox. But if Destiny is anywhere near the snippet that I got to play, I think it could be one of the greatest games to ever be played on consoles. And I'm aware that I've been singing this game's praises, but there's at least one issue I know that needs to be brought up, and that's balancing. There's 3 classes in the game, and it seems that some of the classes play better than the others, or at least have stronger attributes, And that might be a level thing due to the alpha, since we can only play up to level 8. Or it could be due to a couple more months worth of tweaking of the game. But right now, I can see how the balancing of this game would lend to certain classes being played over others, and how that can make the game not fun. It is ridiculously obvious in competitive multiplayer, because the Titans were super powerful with their ground pounds and tank-like armor that seemed to have pretty much an extra health bar, and that made competitive multiplayer just super annoying. I only played about 7 rounds purposely for the preview, but after 3 I really wanted to stop. Hopefully that'll get worked out. It's pretty obvious after hearing my love affair with this preview, you could tell I went from cold to boiling hot on this game, and I can't wait to sink more hours into the beta coming out at the end of July. If they can get the fine tuning down for the classes, this is definitely going to be something that everyone's going to want to play.
You struggle playing Sonic.